And I was like, what the fuck? Why do I got to plead guilty? They're like, that's just how it works here, Eric. What do you care? It's Pakistan. And at the time, I was like, this is like, I was pissed. These guys had taken everything from me, my freedom. I've been tortured. I had to do all kinds of terrible things. And now they're saying you have to plead guilty to go home. Fuck that. And then I definitely don't want to plead guilty, but it was the Pakistani interpreter that was worked for the embassy that made my decision easy. He says to me, Eric, what's worth more to you, your pride or your freedom?
Mm.
That made my decision so easy.
Yeah.
Right. My decision so easy. I knew this was going to hurt. I knew it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to suck. But I also knew that if I pled guilty for a crime I didn't commit, I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror again. I would probably end up killing myself years later from, just being depression and having no respect for myself. So this is going to hurt. So I had no choice but to continue to plead not guilty in order just to save my life.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bonfire Talks with me, Mark Wahlberg. Kind of psyched about today's episode. It's a friend of mine that I've asked to come on the show who is now an accomplished author. His resume of, like, if I were to say, Eric, who you are to the audience, there are so many different lanes of who you are. And so got to give a background. Eric's an actor, stuntman, stunt coordinator, former professional poker player, briefly an MMA fighter, I think, as well. Is that true?
No, I've only played MMA fighters in movies, so
okay.
Yeah. But I was a bouncer. I was a bouncer for over 5 years in Hollywood. I worked the worst nights. If I didn't get in 4 fights a night, it was a slow night. And I owned a bunch of restaurants and bars at one point. I've done private security, armed security. I mean, I've invested in everything. I still play poker for a living, actually. And now I have a book that it's taken me forever to write. And it wasn't, I'm not a writer, okay, but I have a pretty interesting story. And it took me a long time to try to get ghostwriters to come on. And I would literally spend up to 3-4 months with each ghostwriter. And they would just waste all my time. Their whole goal was to try to get to write a treatment in advance from a publishing company. And when the advances never came, like, they were asking for ridiculous amounts of money. They were asking for like $250,000. And when no publishing house is willing to give that kind of money, they would just kind of lose interest and move on. And now I was out 3-4 months of my life going to these guys, telling my story. And I did this so many times that years had started to go by. And then I was asked to do this show, Locked Up Abroad. They wanted me on since season 1. I didn't want to do it because they sent me a bunch of tapes of people who had already been on the show. This is before it was airing.
Right.
And all the episodes had the same thing in common. They were all guilty drug smugglers, and I was not guilty whatsoever. So I didn't want to be lumped in with those guys. And I felt like I was better than them. I didn't want to be on Locked Up Abroad. I wanted my story to be a movie and a book. And as I was continuing to look for all this stuff, time would go by and I was just wasting my time. And it wasn't until season 6 that Locked Up Abroad was like, hey, we see you're acting, you're doing stunts. What if we let you play yourself? And that was how they got me, because, they went with my ego. They're like, and I was like, sure, I'll play myself, because I'm a jackass. And that's what jackasses do.
You know what? My guess is Erik Aude. I started to give you...
Sorry.
That's right. I should probably tell people who you are. I started to give background. We met because you had a couple days a week poker tournament at your house that was close to my house, and I like playing poker, and I got into that club with you and played there quite regularly and got to know you. And I have never said this to you, Eric, in our friendship because it's been poker related mostly, but I've always been fascinated with you as a personality for a couple reasons. One is, this is before I knew your story. This is what we're going to talk about, is his new book coming out. That's out, and you can get it on Amazon. I have it right here. I paid retail. I just want to let you know. And I'm going to write a review. 3 years in Pakistan. 3 years in Pakistan, the Erik Aude story that we're going to talk about. and I've just started reading the book. I would have liked to have read the whole book before this interview, but I'm going to let you know that this came in 2 days ago. So, and it's a big book, and so I started reading it a couple of days ago. So I haven't even gotten to the good part yet. I mean, it's good from the start. It's good. What I was going to get to is that one of the things that I've always thought about you is that you are at the same time the personality type that I fear the most, like that tough guy bully thing, but you're also an incredibly sensitive, kind, and loving person, which I have seen over and over again. So that's why this book really hits different, is now I get background of your life, and it all starts to make sense. I didn't expect this in your book. Let me back up and say that the story, when you say 3 years in Pakistan, the story that is why I bought the book, and the thing I was surprised to learn about you after I got to know you, was that Erik was arrested in Pakistan and spent 3 years in a Pakistani prison. And that I haven't even gotten to in the book, but I'm going to ask you to tell me about it. But what really moved me was how hard and difficult and abusive your childhood was, and how that informs who you are. And now to realize how successful you become, who you are as a man, having overcome these incredible obstacles in your life that I was unaware of, is really remarkable. And in the first part of the book, you hear your childhood, and your mother was not, your mother was beat you a lot, and that was difficult, and your father wasn't in the picture, and then you got run over by a bus, so you were almost dead and had to deal with that for so much of your early childhood. Then you found football, and that you were able to, physically compete, and you were actually very good at that. But it strikes me that you're the kind of guy that just, regardless of what life dealt you, you met it like a prize fighter. You meet life with that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? With that kind of, just like, fuck it. You're not going to do, I'm going to do to you before you do to me. And no matter as bad as it gets, there's no part of you that is a victim. And that really struck me. By the way, when you say you're not a writer, I was also struck by how easy it is to read what you've written. And that I now learned just now that it wasn't a ghostwriter. This is you writing the book. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
I couldn't get any ghostwriters to commit and stay with it because they weren't getting any money.
yeah.
It wasn't until, I kind of given up on the book, but even back in my head, I was like, I was shocked that it hadn't gone, and years had gone by. I'd gone on with my life as a poker player, as a restaurant owner, as an actor, as a stuntman. And I still went to all the meetings that, that were set up, because everyone who heard just a little bit of my story would be like, oh, you got to tell it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was filming a movie in Utah with Craig Schaefer. He was the quarterback in the program, and I was doubling him for a movie. And on one of the weekends off, we went and got dinner, and we just started chatting. And I didn't tell him anything about me, but he had known who I was. It was just bothering him in the back of his head, because he watched Locked Up Abroad.
Where they did an episode to tell your story, and you played you in it,
yeah.
right? All right.
So, in the industry, when you work with people, you recognize a lot of people. So you just assume you've seen them on something.
Sure.
He had seen my episode, and he finally hit him when we were at dinner. He's like, oh my God, I know who you are. And we started talking about my story. He's like, why isn't that a book? And I told him, he's like, why don't you write it? Because when I tell my story, I know my story better than me, but I go on tangents. When I'm telling stories, I'll go on side quests and come back to the original. It's just how I tell stories. You just got to let me do it that way. It was Craig. I thank God I met that man, because he was like, no, write your fucking story and write me a chapter, and then we'll just go. So he really got the fire lit under me. And that was back in 2015. And so I'd write a chapter, I'd send it to him. He's like, this is good, keep going. And it took me almost 2 years to do that. And it was because of Craig just reading it as I went.
Yeah.
Literally, I just put everything in. It was just run-on sentences and everything. So it was real sloppy. But my words and my heart and my soul were on those pages I just the good, the bad, everything, and as best as I could remember things. Now it took once again after I wrote the book, I thought, okay, now I'll get it edited and then I'll be able to get it out there. Well, getting an editor is harder than getting a ghostwriter.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
editors would not want. They want all this money up front. They disappear. Like there are scumbags in the book writing world, and I met them all. They were coming at me, and they're just. It sucks because you think it's easy. You write a book, you publish it, you get it out. No, it is not. You got to make sure that you got to make sure you get the right people, and
Sure.
there's no such thing.
Yeah.
So I would get an editor. They would do a terrible job, take my money, and leave, or they wouldn't edit it at all, or they wouldn't edit it anywhere near the way I wanted it because they were just hacking away at my personality, my sense of humor, my anger. You know, which is what you need in order to explain something. They were like writing it like computer instructions, and it was terrible.
Almost like if you gave AI a prompt. And
I guess,
yeah,
I guess it was terrible. Like I would read this stuff, and I'm like, this isn't my words. These aren't my sense of humor. You're like, okay, I grew up, I got run over by a bus, I got a mother, she beat me. Now, what the fuck? Come on, just
yeah.
You got to explain it better than that. So it wasn't until late last year that my friend Alex Ford, he's not an editor. He's a script writer. I've known him since the late '90s. And a very good friend of mine, poker player, you've probably met him too. He's like, Erik, what's going on with the book? And he's like, well, let's take a stab at it. And so we started. Him and I edited it together, and he did a great job because he got my sense of humor. It was a friend who had got my sense of humor who finally was able to go through it, clean it up chapter, and then I was able to go through it and find mistakes and everything. So we edited it together, and it's 2 years to write it, 7 years to edit it. I'm beyond proud that it's out now. I don't know, and I really, it means a lot that you read it, man.
Yeah, well, I'm in it. I haven't read the whole thing, but I'm reading. You know, this is one of those things where a friend says, "Hey, I got this book. Would you take a look?" Because you sent me a text, and I bought the book, and then I started reading it. And I got to be honest with you, if I didn't know you, I'd still read it. It's really riveting from the first page. It's riveting, and this is you know, I always try to on this podcast find a takeaway that's a life lesson of some sort. And the takeaway in talking to you and reading a little bit is we're so conditioned to believe that we're not qualified to do things like write. And that stops us from doing it. And what I learned from reading this is that, and I talked to Kaylin about this. Kaylin's my producer who's sitting over here, is that thinking about things perfectly is not as good as doing it imperfectly and then just fucking doing it. And so when you say I'm not really a writer, well, the fact is you're not a writer until you're a writer. And you're a writer. You wrote it, and it reads effortlessly and elegantly and really raw. It's really honest. One of the things I like about you is you don't give a fuck about political correctness or anything like that. You never have. And you're constantly saying things that poke the bear, constantly. And that has me love you and fear you at the same time, Erik, if I can be honest. But it's really the candor in you shows up in this book from page 1, and you can't put it down. It's really, really good, and I can't wait to read more. And I haven't even gotten to the part, which is the 3 years in Pakistan. So I'm going to ask you to fill in the blanks there, even though I've seen there was a documentary or docudrama made about your story in Pakistan that I saw. And it's a remarkable story. That you are who you are today, given what I already know from having read the first few chapters, is a testament to resilience and drive and again, not being a victim of your circumstances. It would be very easy for you to, based on your past, live this, you know, I'm helpless and broken kind of vibe, but that's not your vibe at all. Your vibe is entirely empowerment. And I am really impressed with that, Erik. I just wanted to let you know that it's really a lesson for anybody who reads this, of that, you know, we're all dealt I hate to use the poker term, but we're all dealt our hand, and how you play your hand is everything. And so many of us just take what's given to us and say, well, based on that, then I'm limited by my past, but that's never been your story. Glad to see you thriving with a beautiful wife who I know. And I love that because several times in the beginning of the book you say, and that's why I'll never get married. That's why I'll never get married. That's not for me. And now here you are, happy and married. You're like completely like that domestic dude now.
Yeah, no, it's
but isn't it the fact that our wives and significant others save us a lot? You know, they save us from ourselves a lot. And I
got very lucky with my wife.
Yeah, she's terrific. She's also an accomplished actor and stunt woman, and Erin O'Brien, right?
Yep. Well, Erik Aude now. But
yeah. Okay. That. And you're also very astute from a business standpoint. You are a hustler. I learned in the book. You from a very early age found a way to make money and be successful. Despite, again, another great life lesson, despite what the cards are, you are able to play a hand that's empowering every time. You talk about as a teenager or young guy getting a job working on a Christmas tree lot where you figured out how to make that successful and became like the dude who could sell anybody a Christmas tree. And I think that all of this plays into when your biggest challenge showed up. So take us to, I'm going to jump ahead because it's almost halfway in the book before we even get to what the title is, The 3 Years in Pakistan.
Right. Yeah, I had to write linear. It's the only way I could do it. And I have 2 documentaries about my life. The Locked Up Abroad. Now, Locked Up Abroad, I always go back to, took a 13-hour rushed interview, crammed it into 48 minutes. And unfortunately for me, they only took the exciting stuff.
Sure.
And when people would watch that show, they would be like, this is bullshit. This guy's full of shit. There's no way he did all this. And because they put themselves in bad situations and they assume that everyone on average is like them. Obviously, I'm not like everyone on average. And so I had to do another documentary called 3 Years in Pakistan that I produced myself with my friend Jamie Lynn, who directed it. And the reason why we had to do that documentary is because I was getting so many death threats, hate yous from all over the world, like in every language, people were just coming at me.
From the Locked Up Abroad?
Because of Locked Up Abroad. Locked Up Abroad is a Nat Geo show, and Nat Geo is worldwide in every country, every language. So when people would hear this story, they would get on the internet and they were just attacking me. It was nonstop. So like while we were playing poker games, I'm getting an inbox full of like death threats and I hate yous and whatnot. So I had to do my own documentary, which is also called 3 Years in Pakistan. And anyone who took the time to watch Locked Up Abroad, but watched 3 Years in Pakistan, they did a 180. They came back at me and they go, this makes so much more sense. Right. How I am the way I am, how I was able to adjust to what I was able to adjust. And even that wasn't enough. And obviously the books are always more in depth and everything.
Sure.
So when I wrote, I just decided to write, it needs to be told from the beginning because it's growing up.
It all matters. How you dealt with being held in a Pakistani prison is definitely a product of how you dealt with your life, which was a challenge from the moment you were born.
Correct.
And so can you take us, because I haven't gotten to this part of the book, but I know the story only from you and what I've seen. So take us what happened in Pakistan. What were you arrested for?
I was arrested for, I have to throw this in. I was arrested for unknowingly drug smuggling. I was an absolute dupe. I wasn't in on it at all. I thought I was working for a legitimate friend of mine who had a legitimate leather company where he would have people travel around the world importing expensive leather goods, paying them for it. And the whole goal was you get a free trip, you come back, you claim the leather goods as your own in the suit in your luggage, and you beat the 55% import tax. 55% import tax. There is a big import tax coming back into the U.S., but by claiming the leather goods as your own, my friend would save anywhere from $14,000 to $16,000 because supposedly each piece was worth like $1,500 to $3,000 each, and you're bringing in all these jackets, skirts, pants, clothing. By doing it this way, you would get a free trip, you get some spending money. He would save a lot of money. That was the goal. That was it.
Yeah. So it was a hustle, but the hustle was a little out of the lines of legality, but it wasn't drug smuggling. It wasn't prison legality. The way I didn't just go. I asked questions, and the person I asked questions to, because everyone knew what I was doing. I remember my mom at the time was friends with someone who was in the law enforcement,
And I told her about this. She talked to him about this, and then he contacted me asking me for details. And I told him basically what I said to you. And he says, this happens all the time. People go overseas, they bring back like rugs and silks, and they try to beat the import tax. And my question to him was, well, what will happen if
I get popped? How bad is it going to be? Right.
Correct. And I said, will I go to jail? He's like, no. It's like, and he compared it to a jaywalking ticket. He goes, it's bottom line, it's a moral crime. It's like a jaywalking ticket. Right. He goes, they'll probably confiscate it, maybe fine you, but that's it. You're not going to jail. And it was because of him telling me that the prison was off the table that I was like, oh, I'm in.
I'm absolutely. What could be the worst? Did they plant drugs on you?
They didn't plant them on me. They put them they built them into the walls of the suitcase. So if you open the suitcase, sewed professionally in the walls of the suitcase was the narcotics. And what I was arrested with 3.6 kg of opium. So that's a little bit over 8 pounds. 8 pounds in a luggage is nothing. You know, right. And if you open it up, it's an empty luggage. It was just so professionally sewn into the walls. It had nothing to do with the leather goods. If I had taken all those clothing and put it in another suitcase, I probably would have found out what we were being really used to do. But right. You don't want to believe people can do this to somebody else. You don't want to believe that your friends can do something so awful to you. And before this all happened, I believed that if you did something like this or you were involved somehow, in my eyes, possession was 10/10 of the law. Like anyone, if you're in jail, well, you're obviously there because you did something wrong. Now that I know what I know, drug smugglers are shameless. They'll get their products across any way they can. If they could have you go to a different country or a different state and not tell you what you're being used to ship, they're going to save a lot of money by not paying you what you're worth. And also they figured you won't draw suspicion to yourself. So by keeping you in the dark, it benefits them big time. Right. And it happens all the time.
Well, and then the movie, you referenced the movie Broke Down Palace, which is a movie I love with Claire Danes and Kate Beckinsale. And the same thing happens to them. So you were coming into Pakistan? Is that what was happening? You're coming out of Pakistan?
Coming out of Pakistan. It was in Pakistan where I went to go pick up the leather goods, and where I found out the hard way that I was being used to smuggle narcotics.
So
I was one of many.
How did you get popped? Take us to the moment where they pop you.
It was the morning of the 15th of February, the day after Valentine's Day, 2002. So just a couple months past 9/11. Because I was taller than like everyone at the airport by like 5-6 inches. They called me to the front of the line. I was the only foreigner there, and I go to the front of the line, and the guys go through my. I had a backpack, I had my own bag, and I had my suitcase that had all the leather goods and everything in it, folded nicely in there. So they go through all my stuff, and I'm about to go through the metal detectors when someone grabs my arm and says, "Are you smuggling narcotics?" And I go, "Check it again." And they only went for the suitcase. They didn't go for my backpack or my bag. So my theory is someone tipped them. Yeah. And they so that they could focus their attention on me while the real drugs were going through, because everyone's like 3.6, that's nothing. And that's my theory. Anyways, they took me to another room. I'm waiting. I'm only thinking like, God, I don't care what they do with the suitcase. I'm only here for the for these leather goods. So give me another suitcase, because they took the suitcase away, but they threw all the stuff inside the suitcase on the floor. So here I was gathering up, refolding it, not wanting to miss my flight. And I'm also like pissed that they're being so disrespectful with my stuff. Guards started to form outside in the hallway. A couple were inside. And then the guy who grabbed my elbow comes back in with a guy following him, holding like, the way I describe it is like 2 newspapers, because they were so thin, but it wasn't newspapers. It was like these greenish, grayish in plastic bags. And they were very flat, but they were big like newspapers. So it was clearly like the size of the wall of the suitcase. Sure. And I would quickly learn later. And he goes, "What is this?" And I'm like, "He's holding it." Meaning like he should know, he's the one holding it. So he goes, "This is opium." And the second he said that, 2 + 2 became 4 so fast. Yeah. But I still said, "Why are you showing me this?" And he says, "This came out of your luggage." I didn't at all think like these guys are trying to set me up. I thought the exact words I thought are "fucking Ray." I was pissed. And then I said something you never want to say when you're on vacation. And what I learned from the movie Broke Down Palace, I said, "I need to speak with the American government, or the American embassy."
Embassy, yeah.
This guy says, "Embassy can't help you. We're going to hang you after 5 o'clock prayer." And he says it like that.
They're going to hang you.
Yeah. And I freaked out. I started throwing guards around. I trucked a bunch of guys through the hallway. Some guy shot up the whole hallway. I barricaded myself in another office down the hall that had a waiting room. There was no windows. I put all the furniture, desk, filing cabinets. I had a phone. I was trying to call my manager. I figured if I was going to die, I wanted to at least warn the other people, because a lot of people were making these trips. A lot of people made these trips, and a lot of people made these trips because of my recommendation. They couldn't get into the office, but there was nowhere for me to go, so I just held them out until I was wanting to speak to someone from the American embassy, and eventually an American voice on the other side of the door was like, Erik Aude. No one ever says my last name right.
Right.
And he's like, you want to speak to an American? I'm like, are you from the embassy? He's like, DEA. So he says, and then so I open the door, and they crack it open, and he's like, you want to talk? He goes, you don't have to talk to us. I'm like, yes, I want to talk to you. Absolutely. They're like, all right, but if you try to run, I'm like, I'm not. I'm thinking the DEA's there. Everything's going to be okay now.
Yeah, you'll clear it up.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Well, they take me to another part of the airport, but all the guards were holding on to me, like 3 on each arm, and people were putting like their fingers on me. So like they're bringing me across the airport now, but now I'm a little better now because these guys are here. And they bring me to an office where 3 DEA agents are in there, and one Pakistani, who I guess it's his office. He's sitting at the desk, and everyone waits outside. And these guys just start bombarding me with questions, and I'll be halfway through an answer. And then this guy asks me a question, and I'm trying to finish this answer before I start. And then this guy asked me a question. Bottom line, these guys very quickly were letting me know they weren't buying my story. They didn't believe a word out of my mouth. They just wanted to know where the drug dealers were, who I was working with. They assumed I'm a drug addict, even though I was like a gym rat. At the time, I was benching 420 pounds. I was in great damn shape. And it became pretty clear these guys weren't believing anything I said. So I was like, look, okay, I'm screwed. I get that. But give me at least the benefit of the doubt. Other people are making these trips. You got to warn them. And I gave him my mom's name. I gave him Ray's name. I gave him other people who were making these trips names and information at the gym that I was working at when I got hired. These guys didn't want to hear anything. They didn't like my attitude. At the time, I was scared. I don't give a fuck that they didn't like my attitude, because I'm the victim here. And one of the guys put his hand on my heart, and he's like, "Your heart's beating so, man. You're lying." I'm like, I'm not lying. I'm scared. This guy told me I'm going to get hung.
Yeah.
And then the guy, before that, he said that they were kidding. I don't know why they thought that was a funny joke, but I didn't know it was a joke. So I heard a lot of people. It didn't matter. They didn't believe a word I said. They said they'd be back maybe in a couple of days when I wanted to talk. They never came back, though. So clearly the information I gave them, was good enough.
Was there a trial?
Well, yeah, I went to court over the course of the next year while I was in jail.
So you got sent to a Pakistani jail.
Well, not right away. I got tortured first for information I didn't have. Something called physical remand. In Pakistan, they don't interrogate you; they beat you. It's normal. It's legalized torture. So I was hung like a punching bag and rockied on. I had the bottom of my feet beaten. I was electrocuted. I was drowned, and always asked the same questions. They were, who gave you the drugs? Where did you pick them up from? Who else is involved? I was being asked questions that I never knew any of the answers for. On the 3rd day, they just wanted me to admit the drugs were mine. I never admitted anything. Then I got brought to the biggest prison of all of Pakistan. Pakistan at the time had 46 prisons in all of Pakistan. The prison I was being brought to was Central Jail Adiala. It was a prison built in 1986, meant to house only 1,800 prisoners. It was overcrowded with over 6,000 prisoners, hundreds coming and going every day. It had its own school, its own hospital. It had its own industry, like furniture industry, its own farms. Death row. There was a women's prison there. There was a children's prison there.
Were you on death row?
I would get put on death row for the first 9.5 months that I was in jail, but that was because of the first superintendent that was there while I was there, because everyone kept trying to kill me in prison. Someone put a 5,000 rupee bounty on my head, and at the time that was roughly $87, and people kept trying to claim it. It's a lot of money in Pakistan.
So while you're in there, you're getting attacked by other prisoners?
Yeah, I was getting attacked by other prisoners. Knives were coming at me all the time, rakes, any sharp objects. So the superintendent couldn't put me anywhere else, and he got the bright idea to put me on death row because it's the most secure part of the prison. And it was. I would spend the first 9.5 months on death row. First time I ever picked up the first time I ever played a hand of Texas Hold'em poker was on death row.
That's crazy. And that becomes your profession. And you were in there with guys who had been part of the 9/11 attacks. Is that right?
Part of the 9/11 attack?
No.
No, you're talking about
different hijackers.
Yeah, Pan Am hijacking in 1986. Yeah, those guys were. Yeah, 4 of the 5 that were involved in that were in jail with me, and we would end up becoming best friends. What made us allies is that we were foreigners, and foreigners have to stick together in that place.
I can't imagine how you survived that, and then you tell stories that I've heard you tell, and I will read soon about how you had to defend yourself and even take life if you had to. Can you share some of that?
I mean, it's so in jail in Pakistan, the first year was awful. First year was terrible. Like I said, everyone was trying to kill me. I didn't speak the language, so I couldn't tell on anyone, obviously. So people were coming at me from all over the place. It wasn't until I got moved to 2 cell, which is like a VIP cell. It's not the barracks. The barracks there is where there's hundreds and hundreds sleeping, shoulder to shoulder. They could have hit me in the barracks because obviously I'd be too easy in a target. So thank God I was an American. So I got privileges. I got my own cell. During this cell I was working on, though, something I enjoyed doing, which is just me doing it, was I would go out in the yard and I would work on the garden. I made a garden and I would clean up the place. It was just a trash when I got there, glass and broken glass and, sharp rocks everywhere. Nothing wanted to grow. Well, I started nurturing the ground and I got kind of a green thumb and it gave me something to do in jail. So I made this really nice yard. But during the days, the weather would come up to 115 to 135 degrees. It would get really hot. So everyone would stay in their cells with the fans, just cooking. And I used it as time to go work on the garden. I loved working on the garden. And one of my times working in the garden, this guy, I'd never seen him before, hopped the fence. And I figured he was just running away from something or cutting through. And next thing I know, he's coming down the line. And as a poker player, you can read when people are thinking different than what they're trying to show you. Well, it's the same thing when someone's trying to act normal, but you can tell there's something wrong with them by the way they're acting. And I sensed there was something wrong with this guy. And I looked in his hand and he had something in his hand that was glunting. So I picked up a rock. And I defended myself with a rock, and we started wrestling on the ground. This guy was trying to kill me. And I was trying to grab the knife, and he was swinging it around everything. And I was thinking he was going to start stabbing me in the leg or in the eye or in the ear. So during the scuffle, I ended up breaking his neck. And it fucking sucks.
You're put in a position to defend yourself and do something that you would have never had to ever do. And you got that for the rest of your life that you have to have. Thank you for sharing it. I know I can see how painful it is to talk about it. I know it's something that if you weren't forced to be in that situation would have never happened. I can't imagine how you're here today being the guy you are, having had that, plus everything else I've learned about you in your life. How do you process and carry on having all the weight of the for instances of your life having shown up the way they are? What's your life philosophy now?
Just get through the next 5 minutes sometimes. It's a good thing my life wasn't easy growing up, because I understand how people who have, been part of like a shooting or a bad incident, or, they're talking about how they got PTSD and all this trauma and everything. And that was just from a moment. And I'm thinking to myself, like, for you, it was the worst day of your life. For me, that was Tuesday. And I was just so many bad things have happened to me in my life that it was just, I had no choice, man. I had no choice. Um, I understand, like, when we would play poker, and I lost a lot of people who would play poker with me, especially during the elections, because I'm a conservative, and I'm an open conservative. But I would I don't know, I'd be a little bit more rough with my words than, like, I have a really bad time of filtering myself when I talk to people, and so I would lose a lot of friends because of that. But the truth of the matter is I've been holding so much my whole life that I think, from an outside perspective, if I knew of someone like me and everything they went through, I would think to myself, how have they not gone on a killing spree yet and just snapped or ended it? It's I've done a great job of holding it all together. I hate I hate people. I don't trust anyone. I stay to myself as much as possible. The poker games were great, but the truth of the matter was, outside of poker games, I still stayed to myself. I can be cordial and friendly with people, but I keep everyone at arm's length because it seems like I'm a magnet for just bad people, for people who want to borrow money or exploit me. Or, my best friend had me smuggle drugs from unknowingly. My other best friends would borrow money and never pay them back, or they would steal all my crypto, or they would just, I don't know. It was just every time I let somebody close, something bad would happen. So I find solace in helping animals. I go to the shelter all the time, and people are like, "Oh, you're an angel. You're doing a great thing." I'm going to tell you right now that going to the shelter is my therapy, because those animals, they're scared. I know what it's like to be in a cell and not having anyone understand you and not knowing what's going to happen.
I'm so glad you shared this, because I've witnessed all that you're talking about. I don't agree politically with, we're not on the same page politically, but this is also another takeaway for those of you who are listening to this, is that disagreement or different points of view is not enough reason to not connect. And because my experience of you is all that you said, but not, Erik, because my take on you is that the outside is this dude that you've explained a little bit, but what really is more than apparent to me is the part of you that is so loving to animals, is that inside you is a very sensitive, very loving person who wants to trust, and because you're an alpha dude, you fight against things that are wrong. If you think it's wrong, you have no problem throwing down for that. Which I think is very noble, actually. And but I see you as this really very loving and sensitive, loyal friend. And I've never, our relationship has been pretty casual, but I need to say to you that if shit were going down and I was in trouble, you might be someone I would call, because I know that you would, damn the torpedoes. And if it's somebody you're down for them regardless of the consequence. And I think that's fair to say about you. I think if I were to call you and say I'm in trouble, you're going to show up for me. And in some case, that's reciprocal. So that's why I really was excited to talk to you. You've made an impact on my life. Your life is so different than mine. Mine has been cush and wonderful, and whatever trauma I have or anything that I grapple with, as we all do, doesn't compare to what you've actually had to grapple with. So that you're here being the guy that you are, a loving husband, a successful businessman, a friend to so many people, and also a fighter, is I hold you in in a very high esteem, Erik. I just need to let you know that.
I appreciate hearing that, Mark. Thank you. It means a lot. Thank you.
Well, you've earned it. I think that's who you actually truly are, as a loyal friend to those that have won your trust, and a cynic and skeptic for obvious reasons to anyone else until they prove to you that they're on the up and up. And I'm grateful that you've treated me with such respect and friendship, because you really have. Even though you would talk shit to me when I do stupid shit at the poker table, and it breaks my heart and it makes me sad. But But again, that's
strategy
the
too.
kind of
My
people you
strategy
need
works.
in your life. You know, I know I'm not a good poker player, and you're more than willing to remind me of that when I make fucking bonehead moves. So you're in Pakistan. This incident you shared that I don't need to go into anymore was about survival and nothing more. I know that was, while your story lets me know that you would be in, at least emotionally, in the right to act out. That's not the story here. The story is survival. The story is, your story is, I'm just going to survive this. And I don't ever get the sense, Erik, that you resent or are have any of this poor me attitude about it. It is what it is, and there's an acceptance in you, and then you carry on. Is that fair to say?
It is. I mean, I have my moments where I'm like, Jesus Christ, what else can you throw at me? You know, but I know it's coming. I expect it to come. So I don't know. I'm not shocked when bad things happen to me. I don't know what it is. I'm when bad things happen to me, man. I'd love to say my life is amazing, and it is. It is amazing, but I'm so used to when bad things happen that it's not a shock anymore. And I think that that's just everything that happened to me growing up is kind of trained me in a sense to be ready for it. What happened in jail in Pakistan, I always say if anyone was meant to go to prison, it was me. I was built for prison. I was built in every way to go to jail. And I would laugh about that. As everything had happened to me in jail, I'm like, I kind of already prepped for this in some way or form.
Which is why it's important to write what you wrote before you get to Pakistan. It's really important to get that context about what mountains you had to climb, and then this. Let's get back to your 3 years, which was hard to imagine surviving every day, because, like you said, this is the worst day of anyone's life. It was just Tuesday for you. How do you get out? How did you finally get out of prison?
The legal system in Pakistan is a joke. It's a fucking joke. All right. There's a lot of innocent people in jail in Pakistan. Like I said, when you are arrested, they do something called physical remand, where they beat what they think is the truth out of you. Unfortunately, this system's flawed because they're beating people who probably are innocent. And then what they're trying to get out of them is like names and like places. So in order to get the beating to stop, these people will start just throwing out all kinds of random names.
Sure.
You know, their neighbors' names, their family members'
Anything
names.
to make it stop. Yeah.
The taxi drivers' names, yes. And so then what'll happen is they'll go and they'll arrest these people whose names got thrown at them, and now they're beating them. And now you've got a whole little labyrinth, you know, of people who are part of something that they don't know anything of, admitting that they're part of it and naming more names. So now you got all these assholes coming to jail for crap that they're probably not part of. You know, I'm granted they're not angels, but Pakistan sucks in that sense. I couldn't get a fighting chance whatsoever because in the newspapers, they knew that I was an actor and a stuntman. They knew I worked in the movie The Scorpion King. So they were calling me the hero of the mummies, which made them all think that I was Brendan Fraser. Not a joke. Sounds funny now, but it wasn't funny then.
Yeah, it's not funny.
Everyone thought that I was a multimillionaire. So this is a $400 case for anyone else because it's a 9C case. You got 9A, 9B, 9C based on the amount of drugs that were found on you. 9C, anything over a 1 kg is a 9C. And anything under 100 grams is a 9A. So 100 grams to 1 kg is a 9B. Now, 9C means that you can be sent anywhere to jail from 1 year to death. It depends on the discretion of the judge. That's a big window of discretion. And then that allows the judge to decide, all right, I'm going to punish this guy based on how much he pays me, how much his people pay me. And this opens up a window for corruption. If you're guilty, you want to go to jail in Pakistan because then you could play the game. You could pay the judge off. You could pay the prosecutor off. You could pay the witnesses off. And then they'll say, oh, we didn't find this much drugs on him. We only found 9A because they'll hide the rest of it.
Right.
And then you'll plead guilty, pay off everyone. You'll get like a very small prison sentence, which would be like a couple years, but they let you go for if you bribe the right people. I'm innocent, 100% innocent, and I don't want to play this game.
You're also not a millionaire either.
Oh, no, I'm not. Not. It doesn't matter. So I'm not even getting this opportunity to play the game because they're asking for like ridiculous amounts of money. Um, I would end up getting sentenced. I thought, I mean, when I went to court the first time, not the first time, I went to court over the course of a year, of 11 and a half months. But when I went for the final decision, the judge had wanted $125,000 for my acquittal. Didn't have that kind of money, couldn't do it. So he kept delaying my case. Finally, through the lawyer that I finally ended up happening, and through a couple of the consulars at the embassy, they were like, "Hey, Eric, congrats! You're going to go home. Judge is going to give you a 2-year prison sentence. Since you've been here so long, you're probably only going to be here another 4 months. You got to pay him $1,000 at the time, 60,000 rupees, and you're going to go home." I was like, "This is great. Let's do it." And they're like, "But you have to plead guilty." And I was like, "What the fuck? Why do I got to plead guilty?" They're like, "That's just how it works here, Eric. What do you care? It's Pakistan." And at the time, I was like, "This is like," I was pissed. These guys had taken everything from me, my freedom. I've been tortured. I had to do all kinds of terrible things. And now they're saying you have to plead guilty to go home. Fuck that. And then I definitely didn't want to plead guilty, but it was the Pakistani interpreter that worked for the embassy that made my decision easy. He says to me, "Eric, what's worth more to you, your pride or your freedom?"
Mm.
That made my decision so easy.
Yeah.
Right? My decision so easy. I knew this was going to hurt. I knew it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to suck. But I also knew that if I pled guilty for a crime I didn't commit, I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror again. I would probably end up killing myself years later from, just being depression and having no respect for myself. So this is going to hurt. So I had no choice but to continue to plead not guilty in order just to save my life. So when I went back in the court and I told the judge, I'm not changing my plea, not guilty. Like they tried to send me out. They wanted me to reconsider. I refused to reconsider, and brought me back in. So I was expecting this guy to give me life or death. I was always expecting the lower court to fuck me. My game plan had always been the higher court. He gave me 7 years, and I was stoked when he gave me 7 years. I was happy because I was expecting 25 to life or death.
Or death, yeah.
7 years though is really harsh compared from what I was arrested with, because there's guys who are arrested with like 5 tons of hashish or heroin, and they only got like 5 years because they played the system. They paid the right people.
Sure.
And here I am with 3.6 kg of opium, which in drug smuggler terms is considered like the stepchild. Like, no one wants opium. They want hashish and heroin and
yeah,
cocaine and all that other fun stuff. Opium is considered like a very low narcotic. Regardless, that's what I was arrested with. And when I was given 7 years, I was happy. But I didn't just go back to my cell and do nothing. I always did something every day. All right. I was learning 20 to 40 words every day with flashcards. I learned how to read and write the language. I was learning the legal system. Would become a lawyer in jail in Pakistan, taking correspondence courses through the AIOU, the Allama Iqbal Open University. And while I was working on my case, I was also working on several other foreigners' cases, and I would help get 7 foreigners released from prison. And I was able to get my case reheard in the high court. It's all in the book, but my mom had gotten a lawyer back in the States through Pakistani people that were like, "Hey, we can help. I'll tell you right now, if you ever get arrested in Pakistan, don't go to the Pakistanis here in America, because they don't see it as a terrible situation. They see it as an opportunity to try to get some money out of you." And that's what was happening back here in the States, is people were saying, "I have people that can help you." And they were taking whatever money my mom had. And her being involved was hurting me really bad, because no one wanted to deal with me because I'm in the jail. They figure I got no resources, and they didn't even want to come to the prison to deal with me. They wanted to be on the phone and talk to her. And, "You got to send more money. I'm dealing with your son's case." And she's over here, not knowing how it's working on the other side of the planet. So I can't fault her for that. But her being involved is screwing me, because no one wants to deal with me. They just want to deal with her. So I would end up having to tell the embassy, "Hey, my mom is not allowed to know anything anymore about my case," because her lawyer that she had hired had gone and withdrew the appeal in my high court, costing me my one chance in high court, because I refused to pay him the $25,000 that he was trying to extort. And I said, "This is too much money. I can't afford it." And I did this all through letter, by the way. I never once met this man, by the way. I did this all through correspondence letter. And I would find out through the newspapers, because that was always a big story in Pakistan, that famous actor Erik Anthony, his lawyer, withdraws the appeal. And I'm like, That's my one chance in high court. So thanks to my mom on the other side of the planet being involved, she just cost me my one chance in high court. By this time, though, I'm learning the law and I'm writing letters left and right. And I would have to end up using my friendship with the hijackers to get their lawyer to smuggle. To get their lawyer, but once you're, I know I'm kind of all over the place. It will make sense in my book, but once you're a convict, the American embassy stops helping you. They will not come back to the courts or to the prison to help get you a lawyer. Once you're a convict, they don't care about your appeals. They're useless. They're absolutely useless. So, in order to get a lawyer to help me with the appeals, they got to come to the prison so that you can sign a letter and so you can pay them and work everything out. But the prison wouldn't let them come visit me because the embassy wasn't making the prison make them come visit me. So what I would have to do when I found out that this other lawyer had withdrew my appeal, I went to the hijackers to tell them what had happened. They said, "All right, how much money do you have?" At the time, I think I had 8,000 rupees, which is a lot of money in jail, but it wasn't enough to pay the lawyer off. The lawyer that I had gone to do my appeal, we agreed that he was going to do it for $400. He was going to take 18,000 rupees up front, 6,000 rupees when the job was done. And I had told the embassy to pay him. Turns out that little bastard from the embassy, the Pakistani interpreter from the embassy, had jacked all my money. And he was not telling me that there was no more money in my accounts, because the more money that comes to the embassy, he was keeping it all. The little fucker that was over there is supposed to be helping me out, that working for the embassy, had jacked all my money. That's all in the book. It was obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. So the embassy was going out of the way to hurt me without knowing, because of the Pakistani interpreter. My mom being involved was hurting me because no one wanted to deal with me. They wanted to deal with her. And I had to end up relying on the Palestinian hijackers to take up a collection, because we needed 18,000 rupees. I only had 8,000. They took up a collection from everyone else in the prison, because by this time I had earned a lot of respect. And so the prisoners, who were broke as fuck, donated the other 10,000 rupees. And we smuggled 18,000 rupees from the prison out with a prisoner that was going to and from court. And he was able to get the money to the lawyer. The lawyer gave him a note to come back to me that night saying, "Hey, I got it. I'm going to move forward." And this allowed my case to be reopened in the high court, which allowed me to get brought to the prison, or out of the prison, to go to the high court to argue on behalf of myself on how this lawyer that my mom had hired was trying to extort $25,000. When I fired him, he withdrew my appeal, not with my consent. And the two judges in the high court were like laughing at my expense. They're like, "What, were you trying to retire off of this guy?" And one judge was like, his whole family was trying to retire off of this guy. So they're laughing at my expense. But this is all being done in Urdu, by the way. And I'm able to argue my case there. And they're like, they were very impressed that I was speaking Urdu and actually, calling this dude out. So what they did, though, is they said, we understand that you're a guest in our country. We're sorry that this is happening to you. We're going to give you one more chance at high court. So they reopened my case in the high court, but they didn't argue it right then and there. All they did was take my paper, put it back in the stack, and which would give me until it got back to my case.
Sure.
Stack is pretty damn big, though. So it would take 7 months after I was arrested. So it would take another year and 4 months before my case would get heard again. And I had to go to court and argue my case. And while I was waiting to go back to court, I was arguing other people's cases. I was organizing poker tournaments in jail. I was organizing soccer matches against the guards.
But what was the thing that then said, let him go?
What's that?
What was the thing ultimately that let you out of prison?
They believed me. They believed
the high court.
The high court believed me, but what I did do is I used all the points that the lower court, that the guards at the airport did. Because what the guards at the airport did to try to make it look like that was my suitcase, because remember, I was hired there to bring a suitcase with leather goods in it, and I had my own bag and I had my other own bag. But what they did is they took my backpack of goods and they took my other bag and they emptied it all out into that one suitcase. So it wouldn't have fit at all, but they did this to make it like, look, it's all his stuff. They put my portable DVD player in there. They put my cell phone in there, my wallet in there.
So you made that, you brought to attention of the high court the corruption that happened when you were arrested.
Correct. And I was like, well, hold on. So they admit that this suitcase is going underneath the plane, right? Well, why would I put my portable DVD player in that suitcase? That whole point of a long plane flight is to watch a movie. This is back before there was the videos on the back of the seats. I was the only one with a portable DVD player. Also, my cell phone. What if somebody calls me? I can't answer it. Granted, I didn't have a cell phone plan that would allow me to answer phones anywhere other than in America, but they didn't need to know that. My passport. Well, how am I going to show my ID? My passport's in a suitcase that's going
So
underneath
you made
the
that
plane.
case, and that was what swung them, is that you were
Correct.
able to.
Because I told them, I said, because clearly that suitcase wasn't mine, and which it was true. The suitcase was not mine. But I used their points to show that they went out of the way to frame me because I'm traveling by myself. And by doing that, they didn't care. They wouldn't have cared that, oh, I was hired and not knowing. Then I'm guilty in their eyes. That's all they care about. So I used all the points of them trying to make sure that it looked like it was my suitcase against them. And that's what won the judges over. The judge's exact words were, we can't say we have an American in our prison for 3 years for a crime he didn't commit. It makes us look bad. We're going to have to think about this. So I go back to jail. And I'm waiting, and waiting for the decision. Now, they're putting my name in the newspaper every damn day. You know, it was normal. And so what would end up happening is they would give me time served, and I would find that out a week later that they're giving me time served. And I was like, I will take it. And I never pled guilty. I never copped the plea, nothing. I always held true to my values. I always maintained my innocence. And I was able to go home in just under 3 years, 2 years, 10 months, 15 days after I was arrested.
So I'm hearing so much that are life lessons that you were forced to actualize, but they play out for us, you guys, in that you can either give power to the things that happen to you and then argue for agreement from other people, basically say, look, this happened to me, this is why I'm here, and it can't be fixed, and that's what's up. Or you can do what you did. Educate yourself, empower yourself, find the tools to carry on. And ultimately, no one got you out of prison except for you. Your hard work got you out of prison. And now, now your life is pretty great, I think, by all standards.
Oh, first of all, yeah, it's better than normal. That's for sure. I mean, I live in the country on my own. I have my house is paid off. I'm buying houses and fixing them up. I still get to act and do stunts. I stunt coordinate. All the restaurants I invested in never paid me out because of COVID and whatnot and bad investors. Don't ever invest in restaurants. But I get to. I have 9 dogs, 3 cats, wonderful wife. No.
So what can you, to wrap this up, because we could do this for about 4 hours and not be anywhere near it, but I think that we become a combination of all the things that have happened to us, and how we respond to what's happened to us is the difference between your story and others. So day to day now, who are you now based on all the stuff that has happened that you've overcome and what you were dealt as a child, a young child, and then all of these bumps in the road? How do you stay as, I mean, people who are meeting you for the first time here may hear you as a guy who expects the worst to happen, but I actually hear a very positive outlook on life from you. How do you manage to carry on?
Because of, I mean, I'd have my dogs relying on me, you know, like I said, my animals are my best, they're what keep me going. My animals. It'd be easy to check out. It would be because of everything that I wish I could just get rid of everything in my head, but I can't. It's there. I try to work out. I try to have routines. I try to stay busy. I try to laugh, you know. I definitely try to focus on the good around me, and it's everywhere. My animals, though, are the best part of my life. My wife, you know, her and I, we work. I'm glad she hasn't given up on me. I would have given up on me a long time ago.
I think even in my life, which has been cush compared to yours, I often ask myself, why has my wife stayed by my side? To wrap this up, the thing that impresses me most about you, Erik, is that anyone else, given the true story of your life, may have checked out or acted out If enough people call you a criminal or a bad guy, you're going to start to believe them. The fact that you never copped a plea, which would have been the easy road, and probably had no consequence on the back end, except for what you said, the knowing that you had to admit something you didn't do. The fact that you held to something that people often look over, which is integrity, and who you are today actually is a champion of those who can't fight for themselves. The fact that while you were in prison, this is a huge thing that I didn't realize, but the fact that while you were in prison, you educated yourself to become a lawyer for your own survival, but in doing so, saved 7 or so people. That even with everything you've gone through, you're still paying it forward to people less fortunate is really admirable. It's a miracle, dude. I don't know who has that kind of inner strength to do that, or willingness to prolong their agony for the right reasons. You know what I mean? I really don't know how you did it and how you continue to do it. And anybody who knows you as funny and fun and high energy and outrageous and a party, essentially. Not the darkness of the story. That's not who you are. It's just not who you are. I mean, it's there, but it's just amazing to me what you've overcome and who you are today. Any last words you can leave my audience with as life lessons or things to take away from your perspective?
Well, before I do that, I just want to say, hearing you describe the words off of the pages means a lot to me, because I was nervous how people were going to perceive what I wrote, whether they're going to, obviously I want someone to read it, but also not be bored by it and enjoy it. But you saying that it's an easy read means a lot, because like I said, I'm not a writer, but I had no choice. If I wanted it told, I had to do it myself. And so, like many things in my life, I've had to do a lot of things by myself. One thing I always tell myself is just little by little, just little by little. When I was in jail and my ears were hurting and I was in so much pain and I was thinking about killing myself, I just told myself to get through the next 5 minutes, just the next 5 minutes. And then 5 minutes would come and go and I get through it and I'd say the next 5 minutes. I would set little goals for myself. When the guards were raiding the prison cells and destroying everything, I'd say, hey, at least there's always ketchup. No matter how bad the food was, you can make it a little better with ketchup. And I would focus on the little things. I would focus on the little victories. When everything was taken away from me, absolutely everything was taken away from me, the things I missed the most were things that I took for granted. I always say ice water. Ice water is gold. Clean water, a sitting toilet, a warm shower, being able to pick up the phone and call an old friend and just talk about nothing, listening to a song that brings up a great memory, going into the animal shelter and petting the dogs. These are all luxuries. These are all amazing things. And, I would never have known how wonderful life is if it wasn't for everything being taken away from me. I think everyone needs to go to jail for a weekend and not knowing whether or not they'll get out, just so they can understand all the things that they're truly going to miss that they never thought that would matter. And
I hope you're hearing this, because what I'm hearing is the simplest things in life that we take for granted, most of us, you don't, are the reasons to carry on.
Yeah.
The simplest things, the simplest joys are enough to get you to the next moment. And the thought, by the way, this, if any nugget is the one to take home, is little by little. You're not going to solve all of your problems. You can't solve them all in one fell swoop. What you can do is right now in this moment, have gratitude for what you have and just carry on to the next moment and the next moment without thinking too far ahead down the road. I think because in the weeds, when I talked about, the difference between, thinking the whole plan through before you do something and then just jumping in and doing it, this is what I'm getting from you, is that, your life you wouldn't have chosen, but what it has given you, if you're going to, and for you guys listening, you want to glean from life the things that are of value and discard the things that we could have a relationship with that mean that life is over. And so you have been afforded through this horrible story of your life the difference between the things that matter and the things that don't. And so I don't see you getting lost in the weeds with the little things. The little things just don't register. And however, the little joys in life, seeing a puppy that would have been dead having a lovely life because of you, gardening, you know, simple joys are not simple to you. Your value system has been adjusted based on your past. I only wish for my audience and for myself to learn that we get to have that too, even if we don't have the comparison of how bad it could be. Oprah talks about you want to listen to God whisper before God yells. So for those of us who haven't gone to prison, those of us who haven't been beaten as a child, those of us who didn't have to come back from a life-ending injury to then thrive physically as a beacon of health, it's harder for us to appreciate the things that really matter. For you, they're blatantly obvious, and that's the lesson. That we're not what happens to us, we are more what our relationship to what is now, and gratitude for all the things that are good, even if there are fewer good things and more bad things. Come back after I finish the book, and let's talk about this some more.
I really look forward to hearing your thoughts on it, man. And I really appreciate you bringing me on to share it. The book's title is 3 Years in Pakistan, the Erik Aude story. Like I said, it took me 2 years to write it, 7 years to edit it. It's now out on Amazon Prime, Amazon. You can get it on Kindle, paperback, and hard copy. I hope you read it. I hope you enjoy it.
Here's why you read it. If you don't mind, here's why you read this book. You read it for two reasons. One, if you want a book, look, true crime and all the thriller stuff, we have a unending appetite for. So just to satisfy your reading pleasure with an outrageous story, this is as outrageous as it gets. But the lessons to be learned in this book and in your life are far greater than the entertainment value of the book. Now, like I said, it's easy to read. It grabs you immediately. You can feel every pain you share very openly. But what I keep going back to are the things there are to learn about the things we take for granted, the things we should be taking as joyful, and the difference between what we think matters and what actually matters, right? And so thanks for that. And I know this is your process of talking about this book means you have to relive it every time you talk about it, which I'm sorry to make you do and grateful that you did. But
I appreciate you, Mark. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, pal. And know that the way I feel about you, and that if I were in trouble, I would call you. I hope you feel the same. That if you need something, I will answer the call, even though I know if I'm answering the call, I'm probably fucked. But I'll do it anyway.
I appreciate knowing that, Mark. It means a lot.
So this is the book, you guys. It's 3 Years in Pakistan, the Erik Aude story. It's a story that you would be grateful to read and not live. And you will learn things about yourself by reading it. And pick it up Amazon and write a review. And, here's your chance, you guys, to actually support somebody who, as you read the book, even in the darkest times, found a way to think about other people, which is impossible, just an impossibility. So I'm glad that this chapter of your life is a less exciting book. I'm glad that if you were to tell the story of like last week of what you're doing would be about real estate and dogs and far more peaceful. And I know I speak on behalf of anybody who's watching and listening to this to say that we are grateful you're here, that you're healthy, that you've built a life that is enviable by many of us, and wish you just a boring, peaceful life moving forward from this point is really what I hope for you. My man, give Aaron a kiss for me and the dogs. And next time you're in town, let's play some poker. And I will remember that when you yell at me, you still love me. It's okay.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you.
All right. Be well. I'll talk to you soon.